The Cleveland Browns may end up being one of Detroit's biggest trap games of the 2025 NFL season. Now, this is a game that many Detroit Lions fans have chalked up to an easy victory, saying it's the Cleveland Browns. They don't score very much on offense. They are one of the bottom teams in the league right now in terms of many offensive outputs. And despite their defense being pretty good, this is a victory that the Detroit Lions should be able to walk away from. But if you take a look at the context of this game, you take a look at some of the statistics going into this game, and you take a look at not only where the Detroit Lions are coming from, but what they have after Cleveland, it's easy to say that this game could end up being one of the most dangerous games on the Detroit Lions schedule. Now, taking a look at what the Lions have coming off of, they are off of a major victory eviscerating the Chicago Bears in a division rival, and a major victory on the road in prime time versus a Baltimore Ravens team that not many expected them to beat. It wouldn't be crazy to say that the Detroit Lions are flying high on their confidence at this point going into a home matchup versus the Cleveland Browns. Now, yes, the Cleveland Browns are an NFL team. Yes, their defense is very good, but they still have that reputation of being the Cleveland Browns. They are still 1-2. And a lot of people look at their victory last week as something that was incredibly fluky. You move forward into the NFL season, considering the week after this, they play in Cincinnati, then they play at Kansas City, then they'll go on to face the Buccaneers, the Vikings, the Washington Commanders, and throughout that, and after that, they'll play the Eagles, they'll play the Rams. There are lots of games to look forward to for the Detroit Lions and a lot of tough matchups within the next month to two. But Cleveland is not often stacked up to be one of those tough games. This is a game that many Lions fans expect to win. Coming off a major 38-30 victory in Baltimore with an elite offense, an improving defense, and stacking wins over the last 2 weeks, a lot of Lions fans see this team rolling through Cleveland, picking up a victory, and going 3-1 in the first month of NFL football. But Cleveland isn't just going to roll over and give it to the Detroit Lions. They are coming off of their own major victory against a Super Bowl contender. This is exactly how the Green Bay Packers thought. They were coming off back-to-back big wins versus, of course, the Detroit Lions, and then big wins against the Commanders. They felt going to Cleveland that it would be an easy 3-0 victory with a lackluster Cleveland offense, and that didn't end up being the case. Cleveland ends up winning this game 13-0 on the back of their absolutely elite, best in league defense standing behind them, and they get their first victory of the season against another Super Bowl contender, one that just 2 weeks ago beat the Detroit Lions pretty handedly and didn't look back. Now, Detroit's offense is very good. They rank 4th in total yardage across the NFL, 9th in passing offense, 4th in rushing offense, and 3rd in the NFL in scoring offense and putting points on the board. Cleveland's offense isn't very good. They rank 23rd in total yardage this season, 17th as a passing offense, 29th as a rushing offense, and just 30th in the NFL in scoring offense. They have not scored more than 21 points a single time through their first 3 games, and despite their defense keeping them in most of their contests so far, they haven't been able to capitalize in a way that many fans would hope that they would. Now, switching over to the defensive side of things, Cleveland is significantly better than Detroit. Cleveland ranks 1st in the NFL in total yardage allowed, 4th in the NFL in passing yardage allowed, 1st in the NFL against the run, and they do rank 19th against scoring. But that is a little bit of a misleading statistic. Over their first 3 games, they have allowed 17 points to the Bengals, 41 points to the Ravens, and then 10 points to the Green Bay Packers. Those 41 points against the Ravens are not very telling of how good this Cleveland Browns defense is. They held Baltimore to under 300 total yards on the day. Even though Baltimore was able to put up points, a lot of that came off of turnovers. A lot of that came off great field position because special teams and because the Baltimore Raven defense did their job. And while they did allow 41 points, the score was less telling than what the actual film showed. Cleveland was still pretty competitive early in that game, and their defense still played quite well in that game despite the overall point differential at the end. The Lions defense is good, but not quite on the level of the Cleveland defense. They rank 13th in total yardage allowed, 15th against the pass, 9th against the run, and 23rd in the NFL in scoring offense. They allowed 27 to Green Bay, they allowed 30 to Baltimore, and of course, they allowed 21 to the Chicago Bears. Now, some of those scores didn't necessarily end up mattering. The 21st point, right, the 3rd touchdown in Chicago, didn't end up being anything for that game. It was a garbage time touchdown after the game was out of reach. That last touchdown that Baltimore scored with a minute left to bring it within 8 really didn't matter towards the game. The Lions really allowed 24 points, but in a garbage time, assistance, they ended up giving 30. So just like Cleveland, the scores don't necessarily indicate how good or poor a defense is, but I think it's safe to say that Cleveland's defense is still on another level to where Detroit's has been over the last couple of weeks. And Detroit's been improving. Detroit had a very good day against the Chicago Bears, and despite giving up 24 real points against Baltimore, I thought their defense played very well. A career high of sacks was taken by Lamar Jackson. They got to him 7 times on Monday Night Football. It didn't allow too many big plays. Yes, Terrion Arnold gave up a big play or two. Yes, there was a penalty that set them up in the red zone, but they had a red zone stand right on the goal line that forced a fumble by Lamar Jackson. They had a takeaway. They played very well, and they didn't even capitalize on every opportunity they were given. But again, they're good. They're not quite ready to be called great. And this matchup's going to come down to which defense can be better. And it's going to come down to one side of the ball for each team. It's going to come down to Penei Sewell versus Myles Garrett. Is Myles Garrett going to have the impact that Micah Parsons did in week 1? Is Mason Graham going to be able to take advantage like the Green Bay Packers defense did early in the NFL season? Graham Glasgow versus Mason Graham, Tate Ratledge versus that interior defensive line. The Lions offense and the Browns defense is going to be the unit to watch this week. Quite honestly, I don't think the Lions defense gives up more than 20 points on the game. I don't know if they give up 14 points on the game, but it's going to depend on whether or not the Detroit Lions can score more than 14. If they can score more than 20, that's going to result in a victory of this game. For the Lions' victory, it is very simple. And really for both sides, it's incredibly simple. If the Lions can score 21 to 24 points, they will win this game. If they can sustain long drives like they did in Baltimore, if they don't turn the football over like they did against Chicago and like they did against the Ravens, they will win this game. That's all it's going to take. 21 to 24 points. John Morton, Jared Goff, the offensive line at Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta only have to find the end zone 3.5 times in this game to confidently say you have a great chance to win this game. All you have to do is not turn the football over. All you have to do is sustain drives. All you have to do is pick up a few chunk plays, get in the red zone, put field goals on the board, put points on the board, and the Lions will win this game. But as we saw last week versus the Green Bay Packers, that is much easier said than it is done. Cleveland has allowed less than 20 points in 2 of their 3 games. And as I said, even in that game that they allowed 41, a lot of that was set up by turnovers. A lot of that was set up by punt and kick returns. A lot of that didn't really have to do with Cleveland's defense as much as it did their offense and their special teams. Cleveland, they have to allow between 10 to 13 points. If they can hold Jared Goff and that Lions offense to what Green Bay did, they're going to have a chance to win with a field goal late in this game. Now, I don't think that Detroit's going to give up necessarily 20 to 25 points to the Cleveland offense. I don't think they have the firepower to necessarily do that, especially when we just watched Lamar Jackson and Caleb Williams both fail to do so. But I do think they can put up 10. I do think that they can get to the red zone or to field goal range a couple times to kick some field goals and put some points on the board. And Cleveland's one of those teams that if they can contain your offense for long enough, they're going to be in a position to win the game. And they may not be putting a touchdown on the board to win the game, but they can certainly, and they are very capable of driving 15, 20, 30 yards into field goal range to kick that game-winning field goal. If Cleveland can contain Detroit's offense for 3.5 quarters, if they can force a turnover or two, if they go into the fourth quarter and this game is 10-7, 13-10, 13-7, 13-8, whatever the case may be, they're going to have a good shot to win this game. Detroit is a great team. They finish strong. They play hard. They are a team that typically puts away bad franchises, but despite Cleveland's offense and despite their overall record, they are not a bad franchise at this point. They are a competitive team. They are a tough team to beat, and they very well and very easily could have the best defense in the NFL. That is not something the Detroit Lions bode well against. They've put up fantastic points against Chicago, whose defense ranks low 20s in scoring. They've put up massive points against the Baltimore Ravens, whose defense is allowing, I think, the 30th most points in the NFL. They are bottom 3 or 4 in the NFL in terms of scoring defense. When they played the Packers, they didn't put up many points. They put up 13 with a garbage time touchdown. And I think it's safe to say that the Detroit Lions could be in for a trap game this week. Now, the Lions are a better football team, and I want to make that very clear. The Lions, if they were to play the Browns 10 times, I think they win this game 8, if not 9 times in a row. But that's why you play the game. If the defense can force those turnovers, if the Cleveland defense can look anything remotely like what the Green Bay Packers defense did in week 1, the Lions are going to have a tough time winning this game. And they very well could be 2-2 in the first month of the season, even with that great opportunity that they have and a big loss to the Cleveland Browns while going into a major stretch against Tampa Bay, against Kansas City, against the Commanders and the Vikings, playing the Packers and the Eagles and the Rams within the next 2 months, could set up some major issues for the Detroit Lions. This game is important. And even though a lot of Lions fans are looking past it, this is a very, very big game for the Detroit Lions. It may not be a must win. The Detroit Lions being 500 in their first 4 games, I think a lot of Lions fans would take as a victory, but being 3-1 sets them up in good standings for the NFC. Being 2-2 going into that gauntlet that is the next couple months will be a detriment to the Detroit Lions. And I think if they miss the playoffs, if they end up going even 10-7 and missing maybe the NFC North by a game or two, and they look back at this Cleveland game and it's a loss, it's going to be a big moment for them in this season. So I don't think that Dan Campbell will overlook this game. He doesn't tend to do that, and the Lions don't tend to fall for trap games very often. But if there ever was a trap game that the Lions were going to lose, it would be against Cleveland. It would be against this elite defense. It would be a week 4 game coming off a major victory in prime time on a shorter week against an elite defense that just had a major upset a week before. If there was a trap game to watch out for this week, it is the Cleveland Browns against the Detroit Lions. But with that being said, the Lions, looking at the numbers, the Lions looking at the roster should take this game, but you can never be too sure. So with that being said, let me know down in the comments below your opinions on this matchup. Do you think the Cleveland Browns will hang around? Do you think the Lions will put up 40 like the Baltimore Ravens? Love to hear your opinions down in the comments below. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. If you've yet to subscribe, please go down below and do so. It helps the channel out tremendously. And we're trying to get back up to the viewership numbers. We're trying to get the subscriber numbers back up. So if you could help that out, please go down below and do so. But with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more Detroit Lions videos. And until next time, and as always, go Lions!